Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Chris, before we go on, we just have to pause for a moment because, yes, I did say the number 50. The first episode of the Virtual Velo Podcast was back in March. Well, it was the 16th of March, actually, 2022. How are you feeling about 50 episodes, Chris?
You know, it's really interesting because if you look back at those episodes, I wouldn't even recognize them. You know, it's the podcast has evolved so much since then, and it wasn't until I brought on Cy Bradley in March of 23 that we really defined our mission to promote the sport in a forward-thinking and balanced manner as much as we could, and to give cycling esports an independent voice. You know, always showing up prepared with the research, acting as a resource for the racers and giving the guests a platform to promote the sport in the way that they wanted to promote it. And after 20 episodes together, Cy moved on to MyWhoosh, and I knew that I needed to find someone who wasn't like me to represent this emerging and diverse sport. And now this is our 10th episode already together. I'm really excited for the future with you, Emma.
I know, I can't believe how quickly time has gone. And when I did a little check back and I thought, my goodness, the number of episodes I've done with Chris already, it's far more than I'd anticipated us putting out through this summer, Chris. And it's absolutely brilliant. Well, today we are talking all things cycling esports world championships. And why wouldn't we? Because I'm just checking, it is Monday, isn't it? And it was Friday that those semi-finals were. And our guest today, I have to welcome Matt Smithson from MyWhoosh. Welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast, Matt. I know this isn't your first time here, but it is great to have you. Thank you for joining us.
That's right. Thank you. And congratulations, Chris. I didn't know it was your 50th. That's fantastic. And look, what you do for the sport as a whole, it's not MyWhoosh, it's not Zwift, it's not IndyVelo, it's not whomever. You're one of those people like me who just go, I just want this to be better. I want the sport to be better. I want more people riding their bikes. So you offering a voice and a platform, thank you very much.
Well, it's an honor that you say that, but it is true. You know, this is a passion project for all of us. And when you speak about the semifinals, I know that there was a collective sigh from the MyWhoosh team, and then there was a cheers and applause. And I felt the same exact way because nobody wanted this event to fail, right? It doesn't help any of us to promote the sport. And the fact that it went off great, you know, a couple of hitches here and there, but you know, predominantly it was a huge success. The racing was incredibly compelling. The platform performed well. The viewership and the watching it, it looked great. So I want to get into that. And, you know, I know Emma has a lot of thoughts and she's going to move us forward with that as well. But I know that this whole journey for you didn't start on Friday, right? It started way back even before the UCI granted you the tender for the next 3 years. And that was, you know, looking back now, it was August 17th of 2023. So this has been, you know, over a year in the making. You know, how do you feel now that we've gotten to this spot, and what has it taken to get there? And not only with, you know, the UCI, but also getting the platform up to where it needed to be, because it was almost like it was to like time zero, and it's like, okay, and now we're here.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I remember I was sitting in a Airbnb in Munich, of all places, last year on a holiday with my wife, and we did the call with the UCI. It was the interview, and I got off that and I thought, I hope that I played a big part in delivering the vision to the UCI on what we could do and what we could do differently, and how we could take this sport to not just bring outdoor racing inside, number one, and secondly, to provide entertainment and something that the athletes wanted to race. So that one, once we were awarded it, that's about when I think I moved here full time. It was about then. The platform has always, when you had the right equipment in that time, the platform worked really well. But we didn't have, it wasn't as accessible as it should have been that it is now. So the MyWhoosh HD was all that was available. It was only a higher end iPad, some things like that. So that was the first thing that we really addressed when I came in here. We sort of put the teams together really, really well to say, all right, some people are looking at addressing exactly where we are today. Some people are looking at the future. Some people are looking at, well, what do we need to deliver with the UCI? So we've sort of structured that business really well. We had the art team doing what they do, the engineering team doing what they do, QA. We brought everything together to go, we are now trying to deliver something to the world, not just to the smaller environment of the UAE and a little bit of a race on Sunday. So that was sort of the real mindset change that we had to go through straight away. We got the contract signed. We got all that done. We put the plans in place. It's been a whole team effort, but I put a lot of work into the design of what that course was going to be, what the point system was going to be, how we were going to engage all of that. And if I have to walk away from this tomorrow, which I really hope I never have to do, in 25 years' time, I'm still going to sit here and tell everyone that I think I did a really good job of that. So it's been really fulfilling from my perspective in doing that. But what I had as a vision, the team pulled together. We got tremendous support from the UCI. I've worked very closely with Jacob Fraser and Sam now on this in recent times. Jacob understands and gets this, right? So Jacob took it on when Mick moved out of that role. And he could see the vision that we had. But when the art team and the development team pulled together that world that they delivered, those 3 stages, and the first stage still really hasn't been too public yet, had a couple of events on it. I just sat there and I seriously nearly had tears in my eyes. I'm like, I can't believe that this group of people's delivered this, right? So we had that. I wrote it for the first time and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted. Then we got the point system and, we had a couple of small mistakes and miscommunications. And I'll give you an example, and this is what's fantastic about working here, is the team interpreted that each lap was an independent event on stage 3. So what that meant is they thought that the points were on the fastest lap, not first over the top of the hill each lap. So I can tell this story now. So we'd only test, MyWhoosh is a big platform, right? And there's a lot of people here that do back-end type stuff. But the front-end team, there's only a handful of us that have put this together, right? And so I'm riding there was 5 of us. And I actually had got off the bike and got a bottle of water. And I caught back up to them again, but I crossed the line 4th and it gave me the win. And I'm like, we're 6 weeks out. What's happened? And what it turned out is the team had built it to go, so if you were slow over the line, you then caught up to everyone on the next lap and you still finished behind them because your lap was faster, you got the points. It's actually not a bad idea, right? Not what we had planned. So there were things like that along the way that we dealt with and had a laugh about and got fixed. But, so much was done. The last couple of weeks, I'll go through a couple of numbers if I'm not boring everybody. We verified via video 500 plus athletes to do this. So that's a power passport test, that's weigh-ins, that's visually recording and watching, entering those into the system, then tracking them through our verification system, getting reports on them, all of that type of stuff, them entering events, ensuring that the event was correct and that the data was correct and that they were verified. All of those types of things have had to be done. We've designed those courses from scratch, the point systems from scratch. We've engaged with all the federations around the world to get them involved. We've worked with the UCI to get through their things that they needed, and we understand that as well, and the artwork had to meet their specifications, all of those types of things. We delivered, what do we have, 240, 250 people on Friday night. We manually verified all their weigh-ins between 2 and 1 hour before the start. We got those into the game, so they were accurate. We ran the verification. I had that finished by 1:30 a.m. on Saturday morning for all athletes, and a report sent to the UCI ready for them to do the final stage of verification. We had basically no failures of people that were in the race or the event. I think they raced from 31 different countries, very different internet streams, very different models of computers, all of those things. If you told me that we would get there 12 months ago to what I feel that we delivered on Friday night, and have the community say, there's a shift in esports here, there's a shift in racing, and there's a huge shift now that MyWhoosh you guys are part of the community. You've proven. We know you know what you're talking about. If you told me we could do all that 12 months ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
I'm just going to pause there and let that sink in, because I think Matt himself probably needs a small pause there as well. But 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 it also provided phenomenal racing.
Yep.
On Friday night, the racing was phenomenal. And let's talk just a little bit about that, shall we? Let's just start with that women's race. Now, I heard you on your podcast, on the MyWhoosh podcast, Matt, or it might have been one of the other podcasts, talk about what you thought the racing might be, which actually was a little bit how I thought the racing might be, having had a look at those start sheets. But it didn't quite go that way. And I know midway through, particularly the men's race, I was a little bit, whoa, what is happening here? But let's start with that women's race, because the women were up first. And Team Sweden, and I'm going to call them Team Sweden because they fielded 13 women on that semi-finals start sheet. Phenomenal strength and depth from the Swedish women. And they went for it from the gun.
Yep. Clever.
So what were your thoughts about? Was that what you were expecting in terms of that racing in that women's race? I mean, we later saw dominance from one or two particular riders who were very, very strong on stage 2. But stage 1 for me on the semi-finals really gave us different riders coming to the fore and playing different tactics, and others held back and waited till stage 2.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit, not a lot of the analysis on that race, just to sort of did some of the things I think planned out happened. I think there was 5 or 6 riders that went for points at that first sprint that if they didn't do that, they would not have made the top 30.
Yes.
Lisa Hermiston being one of them, who finished 20th and made it in by 1 point. And she knew her strengths and she knew how fast it was going to be. And I think she ran second, maybe third in that first sprint and cruised to the end. But without those points, her race is totally over. So what it showed to me is they really thought about the strengths and their own weaknesses. I think a few of the ladies knew that they would not compete with the Lou Bateses of the world, and they banked points early, and then they just tried. They bit off more than they could chew, and they chewed like hell in that second stage. Well, I always say that women's bike racing is more entertaining to watch than men's, because women race. Men ride to a plan these days, predominantly. And that showed through so much in that event. The women really, really went for it. And it was split apart, like literally a kilometre into that first climb. There was people everywhere. And we do part of the verification is we see some, heart rate to power predictions, and we see, how that we've got a test that shows how hard we believe everybody tried. Yeah, the first 10 minutes of that, you should see the number. You should see the data.
Yes. Well, I can say some athletes who were in that women's race have sent me their data.
Yeah.
Just to say, look how hard I went. And it has been phenomenal. But I can say, Svanström and Hermansson, you're right, the 2 Swedish riders who went out hard. 2 Australian riders went out really hard as well, Tilly Field and Kate Tridden as well. And Tiffany Penner from Canada, who missed out, finished in 21st place by 1 point. I have to say my heart did go out to her, because she really, really put everything down. And she's a rider for me who is one to watch in the future, actually, because I think she's been getting stronger and stronger and stronger on the racing with the women, and the level and strength and depth of the women's race field, I think, is bringing all those women on. And I think it's going to be a phenomenon. The women's final for me, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a woman, but I think that women's final is going to be exceptional.
Yeah, I do too. I can't wait to watch it. And I watched, I'm sure we'll go through predictions later, but Lou Bates, she annihilated that field in that second stage. She was I don't know her. I've not met her. I've never even had a conversation with her online or anything like that. But wow, that was impressive. That was impressive. Like she was really hurting Catherine and Kirsten and those people. It was just a pure display of power. And I'm presuming she's a very powerful rider. I don't even know how much she weighs. I haven't had a look, but yeah, she's going to be near impossible to beat.
In the UK, she's known as a phenomenal hill climber.
Oh, wow.
Hill climb champion, multiple records on multiple courses in the UK over the last decade or so.
And tune in, Matt. We're going to have her as our next guest, so you'll be able to learn all about her.
Oh, great!
No, she's definitely exceptional racer. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that the sprinters went for that first sprint point, but then the cream rose to the top, right? You saw the on the very initial meters of that climb, the top strong women racers that you expected to be there, and then they were the ones who animated the race. And there was a lot of compelling storylines going on from 10 to 20, but the top 10 racers were basically the racers that we expected to be there. And now I know that we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit. I know that Emma wants to ask you about the men's race as well, but when you put the first stage, the sprint stage, into that, I think it makes it much more compelling now, because now the sprinters have ways to get more points. And then once they're have that there, then it kind of equalizes things a lot more than just with the two stages of the semifinals.
Yeah, and you know what else it brings in, and we'll probably talk about this, it brings in the teams. The Team Sweden, right? So what have they got? 5. They can all just about sprint. So what do? Do they put a best time down each in that sprint stage, and then do they line up swapping turns? Do they try to take points off the other riders? Do they try to block other people out? Who knows?
It's really interesting. And if I was one of the, I'm going to call them the GC guys, like say, like Lionel or Ali, who aren't big sprinters, I would maybe give it a go. And if I'm not up there, I just cruise around, use that as my warm up and get ready for stage 2 and 3 when I know that I can really make hay. It's the way that the format is put together. And then also when you think about it, that as the stages go on, there's an increasing number of points, right? So there's once you get to the all out, the third stage, there are more points at offer than there are in the first stage. It's the way that the format is constructed and the courses makes for a really compelling race. I know that when we were in Abu Dhabi, one of the things that you said was that we're not going to know who is the world champion until the last racer crosses the line. And after watching that semifinals, I really believe that. I really understand what you meant when you said that.
Yeah, and one of the problems we had with the broadcast, I think early on, is we actually started publishing results. You probably didn't even see this, Emma, but some of the results were coming up as incorrect because some people hadn't crossed the line yet.
I did see that.
Yeah. And it
was one of the messages I passed across the studio to my co-host at the time. Please note they're not right. And that was purely because other riders, they're live results. And that's what happens in a live race, isn't it? The live results, and people further back down the field have got points, but they're not yet across the line because they've picked them up in a different stage. And we will see that as well in the final, I'm assuming too, because those will be live results. And for me, that makes it really exciting. But the audience have to understand what they're viewing.
Yes, and that was probably my bigger fear coming into this, that I hadn't over confused this. I don't think I have. I've actually said to Chris a number of times in messages over the last few months, I hope people get it. I hope people understand. And I spoke to Matt on, I think it was Thursday night, and I said, mate, please tell me I haven't overcomplicated this and you can explain it to everybody. And he goes, yeah, it's fine. We get it. So, and I think people did. So that sort of, I'm quite comfortable with that.
Before we move on to the men's semi-final, there is one thing I would like to pick up about the women's semi-final that we've not touched on, and that's the fact that one of the riders, in fact, the only rider from the public open qualifiers who has made it through in the top 20 in the semi-finals, has come in the women's race. And I saw her in that first open public qualifier, the Chinese rider, Hao Zhang. She was so strong.
Yeah.
Are you and MyWhoosh pleased about the fact that one of the public open qualifier riders has made the top 20 because it's given? Would we have had a rider from China otherwise?
Yeah, look, no, they weren't on the list, so they didn't have spots from previous years. I don't believe. I could be corrected on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Look, what it did for us is it did a couple of things at the open qualifiers, and I'm glad it worked out like that. I was concerned that a lot of races wouldn't go through their federations and they would wait until the open qualifiers. And that didn't happen. So that's really good. We wanted to get the best people to qualify through their federations. But if you didn't make it, okay, no worries. We've got some more opportunity for you. So the fact that she got in through that pathway, absolutely fantastic. And look, if we get a few people from China having a look at what we do. How amazing is that, right? It's really, really cool stuff. But just on that and the public qualifiers, Emma, and you've probably heard this from a few people, the excitement in some of the people that finished from 80th to 105th, the fact that they got to put on a jersey that says they're representing their country in an emerging sport, they followed a legitimate process. The amount of messages I've got from people going, that's the highlight of my cycling career. I got to race with the best in the world. I was a member of the team. You guys probably know my wife qualified through and she came 99th. And she's now claiming she's the best athlete in the family because she's represented Australia in cycling and nobody else has. And you know what?
That, Matt?
I think she's right. Yeah, I think she hasn't taken her Australian uniform off yet, and that's what we wanted. Like that, I'll be very hard pressed to move away from a public qualification system in the future. I really think that we need to do this. And just sorry,
it's interesting.
One last thing, Chris, just before you jump in there, mate. What I'd also like to point out is we had 105 women race, we had 113 men race. I'll go as far to say as I can't remember not just a cycling event, a sporting event at that level that had nearly equal numbers of male and female racing. And I think that that's a testament to MyWhoosh. I think it's a testament to the Sunday Race Club, some of the work that certainly, that Emma does in commentary, the fact that we've pushed out that this is available for everybody. And to me, that's one of the best results of the whole semi-final process.
The esports to me is about inclusion. It's about accessibility, having that public pathway. And it's true. The racers that made that event, and I know that you said it during our last episode, Emma, that was their goal. And to be there may have been the highlight of their whole entire career. And without that there, then they wouldn't have had the opportunity. So, I certainly agree with you as far as that's concerned. But let's break down the men's race, because that was equally as exciting.
Yeah, and very unexpected, or at least I was not expecting a group of 40 riders to go clear. And such a large group in that men's race, in that second race. I don't know why, I'd had an assumption we were going to see a small group go. And admittedly we did. Ollie Jones, Stefan van Elst and Hayden Pucker kept going clear. Those three riders were absolutely on it on Friday. But such a massive pack behind them. And that really shook me, because I wasn't expecting the strength and depth of that field and how the structure of the racing really levelled the playing field for those racers.
Yeah, I was talking to Lionel about it this morning, actually, and he said that he tried to go clear on the first climb, on the first stage. He didn't sprint. He said it was that hard. He said he was 7 watts a kilo to that first sprint. He said he was 70th at the bottom of the climb. And he had a plan and he was going for it. And he blew up with about 250 metres to go up that first climb. He said, because in all the practicing, everything I did, I didn't expect to do 7 watts a kilo to the bottom. Right, so he was a good gap in front. I think he ended up going over 5th or 6th, so that was interesting in itself. And there was a little bit of a bigger group sort of came together over the top of that first stage than I expected. I think there was 6, 7 at the front. I can't recall now. I had that many things going on. So that was interesting, the first stage. But that second stage, again, I asked Lionel the same thing, and I was talking to Ollie about it as well. And what they said happened was it was so hard on the first stage and so hard first time up that climb. They were cooked. They were all in trouble. And so they backed off. Everybody else got across, because I had a look at one point, and I think the group that Zach Nair was in, they were 18 seconds down at the bottom of the first climb. And I'm like, there's some good guys here that are not going to qualify for the Worlds. Next thing I know, they're back across. And what Lionel said to me, he said it was, once it got to that little bit bigger size, he said none of us wanted to attack or do anything because we were frightened that we'd get dropped next time up the climb and not make any points on that final 40. He said, so we backed right off. And he said when the other guys went, he's like, well, we're aiming for top 20. There's no point risking this here. He seems to think, though, it'll be very, very different in the final.
Well, there won't be 40 riders in a group to start with.
Yeah, it'll only be 20, won't there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Lionel sent me his PB for 5 minutes, 535 watts for 5 minutes.
Yeah, 7.54 kilos or something it was.
The way he described it was, I was playing with fire, but that was his plan, and he executed it to the best of his ability. But just it points to the level that esports are at now. That 535 watts didn't put him over the climb 40 seconds ahead of everybody else.
Yep. We one of the things we track in our verification system is world's best, and so we've got some numbers of world's best being put together with World Tour coaches, and it was breached 27 times in that event.
I just picking my jaw up off the floor, but talking about world best times, that was the semi-final for the World Championship.
Well, correct. That's my answer back when someone said, how did that happen? Because I've just come from a meeting with the UCI about verification, and it was like, well, they are the world's best. But the other thing is, and Lionel again said this morning, he said, usually we save for the end. He said, but we're full gas, fresh. He says, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it also points to the fact that the course and the format is set up where you have to do that. It's not a sit and survive situation anymore. You have to think about it.
Yeah, and the view around that is, I don't think anyone wants to sit and watch nothing happening on avatars on the TV screen. We want to see action, and I think that's what we got.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Now, we talked a lot about the semi-final. I think we should shift our focus and talk about October and what is coming on the 26th for the final. What can you tell us, Matt? Now, we know the format because we've already seen the racing, but what can the riders expect and what can the viewers expect? Are there going to be live opportunities to watch the in-person final as well as watching it as a broadcast?
Yeah, 100%. There'll be opportunities. We've got, so it's held at a place called ADNEC, which is it's like a big hall, but as you know, in the Middle East, everything's bigger than everywhere else. It's an awesome brand new facility. You should see what they're planned. The good part for me is majority of my job's done at this point. I've just got to work with athletes and ensure all our points and that sort of stuff works. So that's all good. The actual organising the event, I'll hand over to the event team. But it's amazing. The pods have got bright lights, and as you go faster, they change colours, and everyone's got a screen, and there's so much stuff going on. We've been testing all the elite justos. They're bolted to the ground. All the connections are set up. It's a huge production that's going on. It's going to be very, very fast paced. Bright lights, curtains, show where there's going to be booths of sponsors and brands and all that type of stuff. We have tickets. We didn't expect to be getting requests for tickets from outside of the UAE, and I literally have had about 15 questions from people. Hey, if I come over, can you get me a ticket? This looks like it's going to be great fun. So if anybody wants to come over, I'll get you a ticket. Don't worry about that. But yeah, look, it's going to be a really, really, really big event. The athletes will come in a few days earlier. I think we've got planned. They're staying right near the arena. We've got areas for them to go riding. We've got spare trainers for their rooms, so they won't use the verified trainers, of course, until the day. We've got a bit of an after party happening the next day for lunch. All the award ceremony, all the medals are done, the gift packs. So it's going to be a big thing.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a big thing. And I know that you've invited us all over to stay at your house if we needed a place to stay, right?
Yep. You're first though, Chris. So I invited you before anybody else. But I think Ollie's staying, Lionel, Kleminski and his partner Natalia are staying. So it won't be too many people, I'm sure. No, it's fine.
That sounds like the place to be. But one of the, we're talking about, this is the first time this has ever happened, and it's a worldwide event now. So the athletes are flying in you're flying them in from all over the world, and it's a source of anxiety for a lot of the racers, and some of the federations, support the racers. They have coaches and things like that. Any concessions or any plans being made to provide an opportunity for their support?
At this stage, no, Chris. I think we worked out, we had a little bit of a look earlier. I think it's 17 or 18 countries have qualified. 15, maybe it might have been. No, there's not at the moment. We're going to support the athletes the best we can. We'll have, rooms, accommodation, transport, flights in, all of those sort of things. We'll look after the athletes. But at this stage, the federations will have to sort of look at assisting themselves if they want to bring people over. If the federations get to a point where they're desperate to bring someone, and they're looking for somewhere for them to stay, or that, we'll certainly help them facilitate all of those things. And Abu Dhabi can be a place that not a lot of people know, so we're more than happy to do that. And we're happy to pick them up from the airport and those sorts of things, but we're not flying them over at this stage.
Now, the other thing to mention is for those of you who've read, our viewers, our listeners, the technical guide from the UCI for the World Championships, because sometimes I do wonder, I know a lot of riders don't read them, but commentators normally do. It does mention wild cards.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of speculation about who may be joining the top 20 men and the top 20 women from the semi-finals.
Yeah.
And we've all got our favourites.
Yeah.
We are putting Matt on the spot right now, aren't we?
Oh, this has been the bane of my existence for the last 10 weeks. A lot of people that don't come from cycling sort of think that it's a guaranteed we're having 24 people here. So, and I think one of the guides went out saying 24 people, where it's actually, it's 20 with the ability for 4 wild cards. Look, the process is as simple as this. If somebody wants a wild card, they need to contact the UCI and put their case up, and it's a UCI decision, not a MyWhoosh's decision, in order for there to be any wild cards for the event. I don't have anything else to share on that. I don't have anything in concrete that anybody else is coming outside of our esports world. They are put in place at this point in time for racers who are known esports or athletes that think that they can win that world championship to go through the process with the UCI.
So we're not just parading out a pro for, just like marketing or to create excitement around the event.
If Tade wanted to ride, he's more than welcome.
Oh no, take Puck Petersay instead. She's even better.
Yeah, and look, I was messaging someone that knows Grace Brown the other day as well, and I said, hey, if Grace wants to race, she's welcome. But at this point in time, Chris, 100% honesty, there is nothing that we have in alignment for anybody outside of our esports world at the moment. Now, I'm hopeful that some of these people do put something forward to the UCI. I'd be greatly supportive to get a big name here, but it's certainly, telling this 100% truth, there is no marketing plan at this point in time to bring a big name to make the event look bigger.
Well, we know that you just signed a partnership with Peter Sagan, right,
Yes.
as a brand ambassador. Is there a rider in the world that has a better power profile for esports than Peter Sagan?
I know, he retired though. I tried. He might be here. You might get to meet him. We might go out for dinner, but I don't think...
It's a big, tricky career risk though, isn't it? Putting your name forward outside of esports for a world championships.
I'm not being... I don't mean this in any negative way. He's one of the best bike riders of all time and one of my favourites, and I cannot wait to meet the guy. He'd want to be on pretty good form to win that. So, no,
it's interesting. It's interesting that you even could say that right at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's the numbers these guys are doing, and we've compared them to some of the best numbers that we know out there, and legitimately, look, Tade would win, I would think, but I'm not 100%. Like that's the numbers that are going on with these guys. It's a different sport, Chris. That's what we tried to prove. It's a very, very different sport. Could these guys do what Tade does at the end of 2-3 hours? No chance. But what some of the ladies and the men can do, it's amazing. I would actually like to see one of the top ladies come across from the road and race. We sort of know the men's numbers a little bit more. We sort of know a little bit where that would be. But I would really, really like a top female come across and see how they go on this course.
So one of the things that you've done, one of the initiatives is to have all the trainers standardized, and you worked with the UCI on that. And we were very fortunate to have the research team from Purdue as guests on the podcast. Extremely interesting. And just tell us why that was important for you to do that, and the future, and why you felt that was what you needed to do as if the host platform for the World Championships.
Because more than anything, I wanted it to be equal. This whole thing from the start, and this is probably a little bit selfish, is I wanted to answer all the questions that I had about esports. And so the course and the design and the points answers the questions that I had. And then I'm like, those guys are not really doing 7 watts a kilo. They've inflated that. Or how do I know that that person didn't have a trainer that reads 30% higher than everybody else? I don't know that's true. Like, just being the cynical person of this. So to me, by verifying those trainers and putting them through what we went through, anybody that watches that event will know that those numbers are in 1%. Well, guaranteed. That's the process we went through. The athletes themselves will know that they're racing on an equal platform. It's not a trainer that's been bought in a local bike shop. It's none of those sorts of things. It is, if they're turning up to race, they're turning up to race in a fair and equal place to everybody else. They can't walk away and say, oh yeah, but his trainer or her trainer read higher than mine. They can't do that now. And we can sit at home and we can say, they did 7.5 watts a kilo. That's what I need to get to if I want to be involved in those things. So yeah, to me, it was an absolute no-brainer to do it. And so we invested in getting that done. Elite were fantastic as we went through that process. As with the UCI, there's the video on YouTube about that. And I think the Purdue thing, it'll take a little bit of time yet, but we'll get some real steps forward from what we're doing here.
Yes, I wrote an article about it that was picked up by Cycling Weekly. So if anybody wants to know about the research team from Purdue and the whole process with you when you were in Italy at Elite, and the video that you put together over at MyWhoosh's also, really great. It shows that you're taking this step. The UCI is committed to the trainer standardization and homologation, and it's at the very basic level, the trainers should all read the way that they should be precise and accurate, and it's the foundation for our sport. And the fact that MyWhoosh as a platform and the UCI also sees the significance of that is really important. And then the next step is the performance verification, right? So a couple of questions with that for this event.
Yep.
We have the top 20 racers for the men and the women. At this point, are we expecting to see a change in that?
I'll leave that with the UCI.
Okay, that's fair enough. The window is open. I hope that isn't the case. Of course, it's not good for the sport if there are reasons for that to change. But you mentioned the UCI, and the performance verification is actually done in-house by your performance verification team, and I know it's a fairly extensive team that you have there.
Yes. So the verification. Look, so getting back, I don't mean that to come across to our viewers as rude, but I've just gone through that process an hour ago with the UCI. We've submitted all the data. We've submitted all the recommendations. There is a couple across the whole lot of the 230 people that we're going to review. There is nothing that stood out as absolute blatant cheating. So I was very happy with that. There's a couple of things where people have forgot to connect their heart rate monitor, and there's stuff like that, right? And that's just always going to happen in this space. The reports were fantastic. They showed exactly what we wanted to show. Everybody's Power Passport test sort of aligned pretty much with where we expected their numbers to be. So that stacked up as well. Though everyone was on the Zoom call, so they were live streamed the whole time. So we know that those people didn't swap riders or didn't do any of those types of things across that 200 odd riders. Yeah, the verification it's very, very minimal that we've had to really pull on this, because we set it all up before the event. So we were just reporting against known data at that time, Chris. So as long as what we saw worked within all of the testing that we'd done up to the event, there was never going to be any huge issues. So it's all the data's off to the UCI now. Hopefully it'll be confirmed in the next day or two, and we'll have a final start list.
So when you talk about the performance verification and you have an in-house team that does this, there are people in the community that think that it would be more beneficial for the sport moving forward if this was an independent outside of the platform. Do you see the vision for that in the future? How does that fit into your fit into your timeline going forward with the next few editions of the World Championships?
It's an interesting question. When there is an independent one, I'd love to talk to them. Definitely. I've not seen an independent body come out in this space yet. I don't know where that's going to be done, whether that's through the UCI to come up with that or how that's done. If there's an independent body and they have tests that I agree with and MyWhoosh agree with, we'd certainly sit down and talk to them and say, how do we make this better for everybody, right? So you've got to remember, MyWhoosh is here Zwift's here, Indy Velo's here, everybody's here. I truly believe everybody wants this sport to be better. I think they want more people on bikes and want more people racing. And as far as I'm concerned, in 20 years' time, club level racing, all of those things are not going to exist. It's all going to be online. We're going to look back when in our 70s and go, well, what was outdoor racing for amateur athletes? I don't see it existing. It's going to get further and further and further advanced in this space. So verification becomes a big part of that. Trainer standardization is number one. That's the first thing we need to get right. Outside of that, it's then physiological verification, and that's the really difficult part. I think that we have the best, I suppose, set up for that in the world. The amount of tests that we run, both from a physiological and a hardware or physical point of view, we can track so many metrics about people. And we can check, I can tell you straight away that whether you're riding or I'm riding, Chris, it's easy. Yeah. So what we've done is really good. But if someone was out there independent and they wanted to sit down and we could all work this out together, I'm happy to talk to them.
So this question may be a little early, Matt, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You've come through the semi-finals. The finals are set up towards the end of October. At this point in time, is there anything you've learned through this process so far that you would do differently for next year?
Yeah, use AI technology to read weigh-ins and heights and that type of stuff, because that was super time-consuming. So certainly that. I would like to have a earlier relationship with the federations. I think that was a hard one for us. We were ringing people and they're saying, who, what's Whoosh? Is it MyWhoosh? Is it like they had no idea who we were. So now they do. I think that will certainly help us along the way in the future. I would like to, and I don't think this will change, I'd like to review the time of year that we've done this. I think I don't think we had a big choice in it for this first year. We needed the time to put it together. We put it at the end of the road season. We did all of that. We probably didn't realize at the time how much of a standalone sport we were, and that there is, being an Australian and Mick's an Australian as well, because he was sort of the main driver from the USA at that point in time. We don't have an indoor and an outdoor season. We ride inside when it's raining or when it's, or you don't have time from when you got home from work. So we probably didn't align with what is inherently the indoor season as well as we could have. So there'd be the key learnings for me at the moment. I think the way our teams work, the way we've done and the event and all of that, we've done what we wanted to do.
Being at the first event, the first time you're doing this, right? It's a first for everything. So you mentioned the federations, and we know that Bart Vandendries does a tremendous job as the liaison between all the federations. But just as a young sport, a lot of the federations haven't fully bought in. So I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask is that you created the public qualification pathway, but there were some federations who didn't honor that. And I specifically mentioned in the last episode that the Spanish Federation blocked a couple of their athletes from even attaining UCI licenses. And I know that you tried to get them in, but it didn't work out. Now, are you going to look at that? Are you going to try to prevent that from happening in the future? How does that make you feel that athletes that qualified through your public qualification pathway were prevented to realize their dream?
Yeah, I just don't get it, Chris. There's not one part of me that understands how that went down or why it went down. We had two athletes from Spain. They qualified through the process that was assured that was the process that was going to work. We'd work with the UCI. Nobody foresaw this as a problem. I get that Spain didn't want to put their own team in. They're probably busy doing other things and all of that. But yeah, I don't know what we could do differently. I suppose we now will talk the federations through the public qualifiers. I think what will happen now is I think that they'll all ensure that they've got bigger quotas and that they've got more athletes trying to qualify, so that public qualification path will not be as important. Like, for example, Australia, they didn't take all of their qualification spots, even though some people nominated for them. And some of those people then qualified through the public qualifiers. If they take all the nomination spots and that sort of stuff, it takes the issue away. But it's up to each federation. If they don't want to work on it, I think it's sad for the athletes and sad for the sport. But, It's their prerogative. A lot of these federations are underfunded and under-resourced and that sort of stuff, and I get that this is not easy for them.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that. I was just going to say, Chris, you and I are going to have a conversation with one of the federations, aren't we, shortly coming up? And I think there's an awful lot to unpick in terms of cycling esports and federations and the role of the national governing body. And, even from the fact, I know Chris and I have chatted before, if you're a road racer in your home country, you have a road racing license and you pay your federation for it, and then it covers you. Esports is in a little bit of a different space at the moment.
Yeah, and here's something I learned through the process. So in Australia, we just get a racing license. You just pay for it each year, right? They're not UCI numbered licenses because
Really?
you don't generally race outside of the country. So
you see, whereas in GB, your license has a UCI number on it, but if you want to race outside of the country, you just send membership an email and they send you a letter saying you're authorised to race wherever you go.
Yeah, so we had Australian riders had to get UCI licenses. The things like that we've learnt, definitely.
So one of the other things is there's a lot of communication involved between you and the racers. And I could see how that is a tremendous amount to coordinate. And there were some that got caught out with the HD, downloading of the HD. And I know there was at least one racer that wasn't able to compete because of that. What do you take away from the communication with the racers? How can we make that better? How can we get those points across? That's obviously a really significant one, and it was not brought to the attention of that racer, and he downloaded the version that he wasn't able to download.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, we'll deal with the HD issue, I think, and that question a little bit differently. Firstly, the HD issue is we made it very clear in the race briefing that we didn't want people to use that part of our game. There's no benefit to it. We optimized it for the normal platform that we had. That's the same platform that's across all the different devices. We've done all the work around that. So there's also an onus on the athlete to go to the pre-race briefing or to watch the recording. I think that's probably as much on them as it is on us. Should it have been working better than what happened it was, I think, 2 or 3 athletes in the end, Chris, to be honest. Yes, I agree with that too. But if they attended the briefing, there was not going to be a problem. The second part is an interesting one. So whose event is this? Is MyWhoosh hosting it and it's a UCI event, or is it a MyWhoosh event that the UCI is supporting? And then that deems who the communication path goes through. And I don't mean this in a negative or a positive either way. It's a UCI event. It's being hosted on the MyWhoosh platform. So the communication with the athletes this time around has predominantly been pushed through the UCI. Now, in the future, being the type of event that it is, we may need to look at how that's done differently. That's just how that always works with the UCI. The UCI they work with their federations. Federations relay the information onto their athletes. But those athletes are generally highly engaged with the federation at that point in time. They're pro bike riders. Everybody knows who they are, that type of thing. Where we pushed a lot of the communication pieces to the UCI, maybe some of that didn't go out there as well as what it could have. Should we have been working with them? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, I think we probably need to have a look at that in the future.
Well, should we talk about that future? Because I'm mindful. We've been here for a very long time so far. This has been really, really interesting.
Sorry, everyone.
Thank you, Matt. But no, don't apologise. But I am going to ask you to pick up your crystal ball and think about predictions. Do you have any predictions for the final? Who do you think will hit that top spot in the women's and the men's race?
We're putting Matt in another tight spot here.
We are, but it had to be asked.
Yeah, after what I saw of the women's race, I can't see anyone beating Lou Bates. I just can't at this point in time, unless someone can really, really sprint out of that top 4. Unless Kirsten or Catherine or whomever are a lot better sprinters than what I think, and they're going to put bulk points into Lou early on. I can't see a lot changing then. My other question is, I think Catherine Fura had not tapered and was not ready for that event. I think she only was doing enough to get through. Catherine's a better bike rider than what that showed, I believe, and she's been heavy into SRC and all of that. So if she has a little rest and comes back, I think that's probably the threat there. On the men's, boy, I was impressed with Ollie. I really thought Ollie rode super well. I really did. If this Hayden Pucker kid can sprint as well as he seems to be able to do everything else, I actually think he's going to have to go in as the favourite. I know that's a little bit out of the school of thinking, but from what I saw, I let's not go into what some of the athletes and people do and say, but those numbers, but that just suits that course.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting, isn't it? Because the courses, like you said right the way through, the courses are really, really instrumental. But I have to say, Hayden Pucker's face at the end of that, I don't think he could believe what he'd done.
He's something special. The numbers that guy does are just unbelievable. Never seen anything like it.
He was certainly, extremely excited about it. He has been pinpointing this event forever. He's all in for cycling esports, and he, I felt really, really happy for him. But then again, when you look at it, the GOAT of esports, Lionel Vujasin, now has an extremely strong team around him. Right. But he also has, Van Elst is right up there also. As far as depth and strength, if they were to put that together for one racer, I think that would make a huge difference. It's going to be so interesting because Ali's up there also. Hayden, geez, the defending world champion was right up there also.
He raced with us a few times on SRC, maybe didn't have the performances that maybe he expected. I did not expect a performance like he pulled out on the weekend. I should have shown more respect to the current world champion in my thinking. Don't get me wrong. I was wrong there, but he rode really well. It was clever how he rode. He's strong. You certainly couldn't count him out. And look, you come back to Lionel. I think Lionel's the coolest man alive. I've said that on a number of podcasts over the last little while. I think he's a really good guy. He's supportive of the event and the sport, and he's done everything. I'd love to see him win this. He's certainly going to be there to fight this out. That's for sure. But I think so much is going to hinge on this sprint stage, the first stage. Who gets on the right wheel? Who does the right timing? Who does that? And you could be a really good sprinter and run 17th. So
I really don't think that the sprint's going to mean anything for those guys. I think they're going to just let those points go up the road, and they're going to make hay when they can.
I think the line might be too fine for that.
I don't agree. I'll tell you why. Because all 20 people are going to score points at every point. So it's different to what the semi-final was going to be, where they knew some people were not going to score points, so they weren't calculating this as hard as what they could. I think every point is going to count. I really do. I could be wrong.
Oh, I tell you, someone who did really impress me and has been impressing me on Sunday Race Club as she's got better and better and better as she's really started to understand the dynamics and racing on MyWhoosh, and that's Mary-Kate McCarthy.
Big time.
Yeah, she is just getting stronger and stronger and really starting to understand how to race the platform.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've spent a lot of time in New Zealand over the years, and when you ride New Zealand, you tend to be on one side like this all day because it's so windy and it's awful dead roads and all that sort of stuff. So you seem to get the stronger bike riders come out of New Zealand, and that sort of suits what esports is a little bit. It's that threshold and slightly above threshold stuff all the time. So another New Zealander out there with Ollie. Yeah, she's been great in SRC recently. She's got the hang of it all now. I think she's beaten Catherine once or twice now as well. So yeah, if she can sprint, again, more points there. I'm looking forward to it. I just hope I get a chance to watch some of it when it's on.
Yeah.
So just as far as the men go, we can't count out Jason Osborne, right? He's been dominant. Mikkel Kaminsky, I think, is on a build, peaking for.
He's better than 15th.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I was, also, speaking from my heart and not necessarily my head, I was thoroughly impressed by James Barnes, going from basically obscurity and taking the race into his own hands and getting a spot. He would be a dark horse for me. Neil Fryette from the U.S., was extremely dominant. Well, I wouldn't say dominant, but he was right up there in his Zwift games. He certainly shows up for the races. And as far as on the women's side, it's hard for me to overlook Kristen Kolczynski. She always figures out a way to be there. And Jackie Godby on the podium last year, she very limited racing on MyWhoosh, right, Matt? You would know that better than me. And she was right up there.
And the Colombian girl too. She rode really well.
Oh, the Brazilian. You mean Gabby Guerra?
Gabby
Guerra.
Guerra.
She
Yeah,
did
Oh,
ride really well.
she is tough and smart. Just came off of a really successful, outdoor season.
and
Yeah,
also
she.
had to do 2 weigh-ins. So
Is
she
that
was
right?
action heavier than she should have been. Yeah, her first weigh-in didn't come through correctly for the event. I'm not speaking out of school here. It was public on the Zoom. And for her weigh-in, and then we couldn't read the scales properly. We had to ask her for another weigh-in, and she had already eaten and drunk by that point. So, yeah, don't count her out, because I think she ran 5th, and she maybe a kilo and a half heavier than what she probably is.
Yeah, well, I have to say, if you take a look at the list on the top 20 on both the men's and the women's, given the format and structure of the racing, I personally think it is wide open.
Yep.
Anybody could actually do it, and I think it is. Well, just for me, the racing is going to be. My only problem with commentating is I have to watch the racing back to watch the race.
Yeah, that was me on Friday night. And look, I'm super looking forward to it. I think it's good for the sport. I think that we can show that MyWhoosh is part of the community. We understand what we're doing. We're trying to entertain, supporting the riders, and all of those things. I can't wait till now, the 26th, see what happens at the event. I'm excited about the race now, and I think we all are.
Yeah, certainly it's going to be a grand show. I know that having been in Abu Dhabi, there certainly is an emphasis on doing things right, about doing things in a way that's going to make a big splash. And I'm sure that you probably agree with me, Matt, as far as that's concerned. And I know that from what we saw in the semifinals, it's certainly a priority of yours as well to get the racing right and to be compelling and crowning the right world champion for 2024. And this has actually been a really fun conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, me too. We could sit here for hours and talk about it, I think, because we're all sort of bought into this now, right? It's good fun. My fear now is what do we do next year? Can't wait to have maybe a couple of drinks and we all sit around and go, hey, how can we make this one better on October 27? That's the goal.
Well,
I'm hoping that you'll come back on October 27th. We get a chance to talk about it then.
No, we'll be commentating the Sunday Race Club. Well, anyway, I think, do you know what? I think that's a fabulous place for us to pause and stop today. Upcoming guests on the Virtual Velo Podcast, Lou Bates is joining us in the next few weeks. So is the Danish Cycling Federation, Jason Osborne and Hayden Pucker as well. So we are going to have some phenomenal guests on the run-up to that World Championships at the end of October. That leaves me to say thank you to our guest, Matt Smithson. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, follow, subscribe to the Virtual Velo Podcast on your YouTube or your favourite podcast provider. You can follow me at Biking Emma. You can follow at The Zimmunique as well to keep up with all this cycling esports news. We'll be back over the next few weeks for episode 51 and more. Until then, stay safe, enjoy your cycling. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Done.